Hi. As he said, my name is James, and I'm with a project called Octant. It's an app that just launched earlier this year, and we're going to be chatting about Octant's regenerative funding, how we're using ETH staking rewards to fund public goods. And so a little background on me, I'm the head of community. I'm doing all the community initiatives for the project, which is really cool because I've actually been a community member in this ecosystem since it started. Octant is being developed by Golem Foundation, so one of the oldest projects in the Ethereum ecosystem. And that's important because our crowdfunding, you might remember Golden had a really successful crowdfunding event back in 2016, which we had a very large ETH treasury that was generated from that. And then a little bit further down the road in 2019, because the ETH treasury had appreciated so well, Golem became two separate entities. So Golem Factory is still building their initial mission, which is a peer-to-peer marketplace for computing power. And then I work over on the Golem Foundation side, Golem Factory is still building their initial mission. And then Golem Foundation is pursuing other utilities for the GLM token without distracting from that core mission that Golem Factory is building. So two separate projects working in the same ecosystem. And so when Ethereum transitioned over to proof of stake and we had this really large ETH treasury, that presented a really unique opportunity for us. We realized we could stake our ETH treasury and then do something really interesting with it. So when we were first thinking, what are we going to do with this treasury? We thought at first, we could return the proceeds over to our community. But we realized, that's not very interesting. And on top of that, the broader Ethereum community is probably not going to appreciate, we're just siphoning funds from Ethereum and then redirecting that back to Golem. So we realized, we have a really interesting opportunity here. How can we program our values into a mechanism that's going to be a positive-sum game for both our community and then the broader Ethereum community? So that's where we're at with Octant. And so when you're thinking about what you need to fund public goods, obviously you need money. You can't pay builders in POAPs as much as POAPs are a lot of fun. They're not going to pay the bills at the end of the day. And then also when you're thinking about funding public goods, you also need to think about how you're going to be allocating those funds. And so it's really important to have sustainability. And then on top of that, I'm going to be sharing today the decision mechanisms and the trade-offs that we've decided that we have with Octant here. And so here's our idea. We're going to be starting with some ETH, and then we're going to generate our surplus through staking. And then we're going to capture a part of that for funding public goods. And we need to create incentives for both participation and self-imposed taxation. So I'll explain how that works in a little bit here. And so here comes Octant. Woohoo! All right, so we staked 100,000 ETH. We're using solo validators and primarily using minority clients. The health of Ethereum's decentralization, really important to us. That's a big topic going on right now. So if you're using Lido or Coinbase or something else like that, maybe consider moving your capital over to something else that's promoting decentralization. So understanding Octant though, so we have these ETH staking rewards coming in and they're primarily split into two streams. So I'm going to go over how those streams work and then show some visuals so you can kind of understand the relationship with it all. But we have our ETH staking coming in and then our user rewards are given to our users proportionally based on how much of our native token they lock into the Octant contract. So if you have 1% of our total supply, it's a fixed supply of 1 billion tokens, then you're going to be receiving every 90 days 1% of what we generate in our staking income. If you have 25%, you're going to get 25% of our rewards every 90 days. So it's proportional all the way through for user rewards. It's important to know that if you don't lock anything in, you're not going to be getting any rewards. And it's also important to know that we didn't want this to become a passive income generator. So you need to take an action when we have this allocation window or this decision window open. If you don't take any decision, you're also not going to be receiving any rewards. They go back to us to be restaked to grow our validator count. The second of the funding pools is our matching pool. Now that is determined, it's a square root function of the entire amount of our token supply that's locked into the Octant contract. And if I'm losing you, don't worry, I have a really good visual in a moment here to kind of show how this all comes together. Also important to know that we do have costs, so some of the rewards go to Golem Foundation so we can pay for the costs. And then with whatever's left over, as I mentioned before, goes back to Golem Foundation as well to be restaked. Again, growing the rewards for both public goods participating in Octant and our users. And so just kind of going through the flow of this here, I don't know if this pointer is working. No, I'll just describe it. So Golem Foundation, top center there, sending the ETH treasury over to Ethereum staking, which then drives rewards to Octant. And so Octant is then going to be sending those rewards over to our users on a proportional basis. Now, that's determined, as I mentioned, by how much GLM is locked into the Octant contract. And so users have a choice. They can keep up to 100% of their rewards for themselves, or if they donate part or all of their rewards to public goods, then those donations are leveraged through a matching pool. So your money goes further if you donate versus if you keep it for yourself. And so kind of understanding how our reward pools interact with one another. The blue graph here, this is based on the x-axis is a percentage of how much GLM is locked into the contract. As I mentioned before, user rewards are proportional, so 1% of rewards, or 1% of our token locked into the contract, you get 1% of rewards every 90 days. And then the square root function that I mentioned before for our matching pool, it's a really unique way to set this up, because as we get closer to 100% of our total token supply locked in, well then we would have to give 100% of rewards to our users. There wouldn't be any rewards left over for public goods. But we're really confident that we're never going to get to 100%, so we should have a nice solid amount of rewards to fund public goods at the end of the day. So that's good news. So as I was mentioning before, users can claim up to 100% of rewards for themselves, or they can allocate it to projects. We do these in increments of 90 days because we do have these rewards slowly coming in over time, and we need to accumulate a decent amount so that things are exciting for users and projects that are participating. I'll go over here. And so the matching reward pool, that it's really important to understand that those are funds that can only go to public goods that are participating. So users cannot claim those rewards at all for themselves. So it's a really cool setup because say every single user in a given period except for one ends up being very self-motivated. They keep all the rewards for themselves. Well, that one user then is able, that donates, is able to effectively leverage the entire matching pool however they decide to donate. So it's a really cool way that, irregardless of how users end up behaving, there's a very attractive matching pool to fund public goods there. It's also important to know that we have a minimum funding threshold, and one of the reasons for that is the last bullet point here, and that users can change their vote as many times as they want during this 2-week allocation window. We did that because right now our setup is gasless, and we're really interested in user behavior because we're really interested in seeing, because users can change as many times as they want, with projects being right on the cusp, will they decide to move their funds to projects that are maybe a little bit safer? Will they give maybe a little bit of funding from a project that's doing really well to a project that just needs a little bit of a boost to get over that threshold? We're really interested in these user dynamics and how they more or less play out within this window. So the not so good, as I was mentioning, there's a little bit of trade-off associated with this. This is a plutocracy at the end of the day, and this is by design. Anything that we do with the treasury that that came to us from that 2016 crowdfund, we have to design around the GLM token. And so this is one of the consequences of that source of funding. As I mentioned before, Octant is not trustless. It's only partially decentralized right now. We do have plans in the future to move more on-chain, but right now we are using our own servers for some of the aspects of Octant. The current design does allow for some low-risk economic attacks. We're pretty confident they're never going to happen, but at the end of the day, they still do exist. And then lastly, as I mentioned before, we do have to run these epochs of 90 days to bring ETH staking rewards in. And so that does present some challenges. I'm the head of community, and getting people to stay engaged through these 90-day periods when there's some engagement downtime, so to speak, it does create like a fluctuation in how much engagement right now that we're seeing from the community. But we do have some interesting ideas to spice things up, to make things more interesting throughout the entire life cycle there. And so we just ran our first round, and we saw some really interesting results from that, so I'm going to share a little bit about that here. So we had about 14.3% of our total supply locked into the contract for this first round, which is about 143 million tokens. So it was really exciting to see a good turnout with this first round. And so the total user rewards that went directly to our users is about 102 ETH. And then out of that, our users ended up donating about 21.5 ETH there. So some pretty generous donations from our user base. The matching reward, so on top of that, the matching pool saw about 228.5 ETH. Oops. Sorry about that. About 228.5 ETH. And so on average, our users saw a multiple of 41. So what they ended up donating was multiplied by 41 going to these public goods projects. So it was really cool to see such a large leverage from our matching pool. So we had 24 projects participating in total, and then 19 of those ended up being above the funding threshold. There was a bunch of projects that were below that threshold that right towards the end, we did see some of those user behaviors play out where some of our users ended up moving some of their funds from projects that were doing really well and giving some other projects that were just under that cusp, giving them a boost to get them across the finish line there. So all in all, we had about 23.5% of the user rewards were donated and about 76.5% that were kept for themselves. So some more metrics here. The top four performing projects were Protocol Guild, Roadkey, Hypercerts, and Tor projects. So some really awesome projects there. We were also really happy to see Tor project, not being in the Ethereum community. Really happy to see that, we were able to move outside just pure Ethereum projects there. And then some other interesting things that I saw, we have this mode called patron mode where rather than picking winners and losers, you could just donate your entire user rewards to the matching pool. And we saw 7 users do that. So that was really cool to see such generosity from our users. We had 515 users who ended up locking tokens into our contract and who were eligible to participate. And then about 347 of them ended up donating. So we did see some users there that didn't take any action. And as a result of that, about 9.5 ETH that could have gone either to users or to public goods ended up being recycled back to Golem. So what's next? So we have our next round coming up. The allocation window opens on January 17th. And right now we have an open window. If you are building a public good and you potentially want to participate in Octant, then you can check out our website, octant.build. Come and apply. We are accepting applications right now, and I would be more than happy to help guide you through that whole application process. Some other things we're really interested in and we're working in is bringing in more capital to Octant. We had this really big announcement last week with a partnership with a project called Diva. Diva is a distributed validator technology that's also bringing in a liquid staking token element to it. And so we have some exciting things working on behind the scenes there with Diva. So some exciting things to announce next year with that. As I mentioned before, we're going to be progressively moving more on chain with what we're calling Octant V2. And we're also researching different funding and allocation mechanisms. We've heard some feedback from projects that, depending on which or where a project is in their development life cycle, it can be really hard for projects that are at a much earlier stage to be competing with really big projects like Protocol Guild or these projects that are really well known and are doing really important work. So we're thinking about, how can we potentially run these different rounds depending on where a project is within their development life cycle. So exploring things like that. And then we're also going to be experimenting with running mini rounds in the middle of epoch. So as I said, we have these periods of downtime within the community. So we're thinking about doing some interesting things with the community to kind of keep engagement going and ultimately supporting things that really matter in the space. So yeah, that's what we have going on. I'm really looking forward to 2024. It's going to be a great year. And here's what our app looks like. So if you go to octant.app, here's what you'll see when you first come to it. Here again, the top 8 projects from our first round, we're kind of keeping an archive until our next round begins. And then when you're locking GLM into the contract, that's going to be the right-hand side there and ultimately where you're going to see. But yeah, go to octant.app and you can play around with the app right now. Pretty cool to play around with, in my opinion, but I'm biased, of course. So if you want to learn more, please sign up for info, scan that QR code. We're actually going to be setting up a newsletter, both based around Octant and then more broadly the public goods funding ecosystem. We have some really interesting ideas for that. So please, scan the QR code if you're interested in learning more. And then it looks like everyone's done with that. Thank you. Appreciate it.